I'm gonna do npx create React app, and then we'll call it Hydra Hacks. Yeah, exactly. Just open the file in the terminal. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. And then it's gonna take a bit of time to create the folders and stuff that I need for React app. However, it does a lot of the work for you. I can, while it's doing that, I can briefly go over what this command is doing, which is a folder system, and installing the dependencies that come with creating a React app. React is a framework that allows you to create, for example, the term is components, where, so for example, when you're used to HTML and CSS, you kind of just like copy and paste multiple lines, even though they're kind of like doing the exact same thing, just like slightly different. But what React does is you can create a component, like one file that does one thing. Like if you have, for a team page in your website, you want every single teammate to have like one box that has their picture, their name, and their LinkedIn. If you do it in HTML and CSS, you kind of just copy and paste the same styling, etc., over and over again. But what React can do is allow you to create it once and then just pass in the information that you want to put, like the picture, the name, and the LinkedIn, as props or properties, that's what props are short for, into the component, and then you can reuse it as many times as you want. Something that we're going to try as well is doing that thing that I just described, but instead of manually inputting or not manually inputting, but like one by one putting in the information that you want to add, we will use an array and then map through the array, map the content of the array into the components that you're trying to build, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry about that. So my Create React app has finished. If y'all could either say that you're done or say that you still need a little bit more time before I move on to the next part, and or if you have any questions with the thing that I just explained, the chat is open for you. It's like right in the middle of my screen, so I will be able to follow. In the meantime, I'm going to direct myself to the thing I just made. Cool. So what we have in our, could you paste the line into the chat again? Yes. The link, the link to the doc that I have on my right is this, and then the command that you need to use in order to create the React app itself is right here. And then, okay, so brief explanation of the folder system of React is, so you'll see a README, which is like everywhere, which explains all of the commands that you can use for React apps. If you're curious about what we're, like the specificities of what we're doing, you can read the README. Package.json is a JSON that includes like all the dependencies that you have and some of the commands that are kind of like built in. Like instead of saying run this app and do the hot reloading, you can just say npm start and then it'll do everything for you because of this package.json. And then we have package lock, which is the specifics of the dependencies that you have installed. Node modules contains every single one of those dependencies. Dependencies being like libraries or libraries that kind of like things that have been done for you. Like if you want to use a library for a timeline component where like you can put the dates and times of your experiences or projects for your portfolio, that is a library, and then that goes in node modules and package JSON. And then for public, it's the HTML file. Oh, so wait, is the firebase.js file from the node.js download. So the thing that you saw earlier was just a previous project. I'm sorry if that was confusing you. But that was for a different project. We won't be using Firebase for this project unless people really want to try it out and we have time. I am so down to go over Google Cloud. I love it. But otherwise, you can ignore the firebase.json. Something that I remembered to explain by showing you what public is. So the way that React works is it's in JavaScript, right? You do everything in JavaScript. And in the background of it, the thing that Create React App does is turns your JavaScript such that it will show on the HTML page, like the DOM in the background. So if you look at your index.html, the only thing that's in there that isn't a comment is div ID equals root, which since people said they were already familiar with HTML, like kind of already makes sense. I'm going to skip that. But what it's saying, if you look at index.js within source, is within the element that is called root, render the thing that is in my app.js. So what it's doing is whatever you write in your JavaScript React JavaScript will be rendered in that section of the HTML page, HTML file called root. You can change it to whatever name you want, but people kind of just leave it alone usually. But so source is where all of the things that you want to edit go into source. And usually because the naming conventions are kind of standardized, if you say source, that's usually where the things you can edit are. So the thing that we are editing today is going to be app.js. And if you want to do styling the CSS way, the regular way, you can use app.css. Something I might want to go over today would be CSS in JS, which is a way of styling websites where all of your styling is in the JavaScript file. You're kind of using the similar syntax of CSS, and it is in its essence like cascading style sheets. You're just putting it in the same file as your JavaScript, and you're calling it within your JavaScript instead of within like the HTML CSS way. But that will depend entirely on how much we can squeeze into the hour. I'm acting like that's not enough time, but it'll depend entirely. So you can see my screen. What I'm gonna do now is go into terminal and make sure that I am in the folder of the React app that I created. So right now I'm in Hydra Hacks. And then I'm going to say npm not install, sorry, npm start. So I'm gonna do that, make it run. It'll take a second. If you're on a laptop, it might take a little bit longer than that. The text that you saw, I don't think you have to worry about. Sometimes it does that. However, we can ignore warnings. Warnings are like mild little nudges and it'll still let things run, so you're fine. So this is the default of React. And yeah, so what you see here, edit app.js to save and reload. This is also here. One cool thing about React that doesn't happen in HTML is that if I say hi, it'll automatically reload and add to the page that I'm like working on. This is called hot reloading, which means every change that you make will transfer over to the thing that you're editing immediately. However, with a caveat that you have autosave on, I strongly suggest this to anyone. There's file and then autosave in VS Code so that you don't have to control S every time you make a change. I mean, you can always undo if you have something wrong, but I feel like that's super duper useful, and it'll make it so that you don't have to say control S to see the changes on this side of the screen. So if you have that on, you can just make your changes and not have to do anything. It'll show up on your webpage. That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry about that. Another thing that I would suggest for people who are like genuinely considering using React like more than just this workshop is there is an extension called ES7 plus React, Redux, React Native Snippets. And I will link this in the chat, copy maybe. Oh, yes, market link. Okay, so this is the right thing that I'm saying. Cool. So the reason why I say that is because there's this cool thing that you can do where you say Control-Shift-P. I'm sorry, I don't know what it looks like on Mac. But then you can say snippet. Oh wait, let me erase everything here. So I have nothing right now. And you see that my page also automatically removed everything because of the hot reloading. Control-Shift-P, and then I say insert snippet. And then I can just say this, RFC is React functional component. And then bam, it just does it for me. It just types it in. It's a little, and then app is already here. One thing to note is that your main function, the thing that you want to show up, has to be called app, because in your index.js, it says app. So if you change the name of your function, you also have to change what goes on in here. So I'll briefly go over functional versus class components. If you want to learn more, the best resource I have seen for like explaining this in the most simple words is W3 Schools, which you might be familiar with because of like HTML and CSS. Like, I don't know about you, but when I Google like, what is the CSS thing? It's always W3 Schools that shows up first. So I trust them. And if you want to look into stuff that either you missed that I said, or you just want to look into it more, this is what I would suggest. So the thing that I'm going to go over next is components. I briefly mentioned that they're things that you can, like, reusable bits of code. And they can either be class components or functional components. In terms of like, I'm trying to explain it in the textbook way, which is a class component is like, you know, the class in HTML, I know not HTML, in C++ or Java, like the class, it's similar. And then you'll have a function inside the class component called render. That's the function that shows the thing that you want to show. And you can put more kind of like functions or parameters inside a class component in a more intuitive way that you kind of see in C++ or Java or like those kinds of languages. Whereas a functional component, just like it sounds, is just a function. You can have other stuff in it. They kind of created these things called React hooks to allow you to do the things that class components used to only do. I think it updated like React 16, like version 16. But before that, it was just like functional components did a lot less than class components. But with React hooks, more functionality was added to the functional component such that either way works. So like the thing you want to do in class components is the thing you want to do in functional components. And it kind of does the same thing. What am I trying to say? So with functional components, I'm just going to default to that. If you want to learn class components, as I said, you can use this link that I put in the chat. And okay, so I saw the time and I might want to speed up a little just so we can have something that we want to show. So let's say I want to create, so the thing that I explained earlier was components that would allow you to put your picture, your name, and your LinkedIn into a component and then just pass whatever you want to pass into the component as props. Props being right here in the website that I was referring to in case you want to learn more. So app, my main function is going to have everything that I want to show, but in case I want to make another component that like I will reuse within app, I would create something else and be like function, oops, function, let's say bio. Oh, naming convention dictates that, oh, this is GitHub Copilot, friends. It lets you complete the entire function. It just like guesses what you want to do. Also recommend that. I'll post a link if you want. So function, let's say bio, and then just like any function, there's a return. So I'll say return, and then the thing to note here is that it's going to be in parentheses, not curly braces. Sometimes people forget that and they have like a big error, and it turns out that it was just like a curly braces versus parentheses thing. But yeah, so we're gonna say return, and then see, it's already completing it for me. But one thing to note for React is that you always have to put it into one container. So if that's a div, if that's a span, if that's an H1 or a paragraph or whatever tag you want, there has to be one that you're returning, like just that one thing. And then you can put as many as you want inside that one container. So let's say div, you can put whatever you want in that div, but there has to be one encompassing container for React apps, or like React functional components or class components. But yeah. This is kind of helpful. Let's say that's the end of my bio. Oh no, that's what I meant. Okay, so, and then href, let's say read more. Yeah, I'm just gonna call it a day. So this is what it would look like. And then what I would do in order to call this function inside my app would be just treat it like a tag. So like bio, and then treat it like a HTML tag that closes within itself. Like remember image source, image tags? You know how you don't have image and then closing image? You just have image and then the closing tag within the same thing. So you'll do that. And then if I go back to my React app, oh, I did the same thing I was saying. I'm sorry. Where this is a good example of the things that I'm doing wrong, but that's okay because we learn here. This has to be within one container. Oopsies. So I'm gonna cut this and then show you another shortcut, which is, so another container is called a React fragment. It's kind of like a div, but all it does is let you put stuff in it. So the shortcut to that is literally just that. It's just the opening and closing brackets. So if I do this, I have div app, and then ideally, let's reload this just in case. There we go. We are cool. So the thing that I put in this component, because I called it inside app, will show up here. It won't do anything, but that's okay. If I want to create multiple bios, multiple of this component, what I would have to do, let's say I say const bios, and then I make an array, and then each array is going to have oh, okay. So what I can do to simplify it for everyone, just in case you're not familiar with it, I'm being mindful of like what skill level people are on. So if I'm like dumbing it down too much, put it in the chat. But otherwise, I'm gonna keep at the pace that I'm at right now. Let's see. I'm gonna make an array, and my idea was gonna make an array of objects where like what that would look like is like this. It's similar to a JSON. Like that. Wow, it's just completing everything for me. This is so much fun. But basically, that is one way that I can map through information that I want to put inside my component. However, because we are beginners and we are going to try the thing, like if it works, it works, we are good. If we want to do that, we can just say, okay, names, const names, and then it's just a plain old array. I wanted to complete it. I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. John, Jane, and Mary. That's fine. And then we are closing this. And then let's say const bios. And then we're just going to say hello. hi, and what's up. Okay, so those are the three things. So we're just gonna make three components, three of these components that I'm doing. And then for the, I'm just gonna leave the link as it is, because I'm just trying to prove a point. So what we're doing here is bio, and then what we're gonna do is allow the function to receive information such that you can take the information that is being passed into the function and put it inside the component. So what the way that I'm gonna do that is create this and then say name and bio. So now, because it's in a different color, it's telling you that this is now a parameter. Name is going to, what I'm going to do with that is put it in curly braces and then say name. So now it's saying that whatever I pass in here is going to go here. And then whatever I pass here, I'm going to say is going here. So with that in mind, I am then going to, oopsie daisies. Okay, we're cool. What I'm then going to do is say, so when you're doing the return, inside the return, it's pure CSS. Pure HTML. So this is HTML, this is HTML, this is HTML. But if you're trying to squeeze in JavaScript into your HTML, you're going to use curly braces. And in order, so if I want to map my arrays into my bio function, I'm going to use curly braces because only JavaScript allows for that kind of functionality. HTML doesn't give functionality, it just makes things pretty. There we go. That is so cool. It completes things for me. I love GitHub Copilot. If you don't have that, just like type it in with me. So if you see, bio name is in John, and then this completes it. I keep touching my screen thinking you can see my hand. I'm sorry about that. So these kind of transferred over here, right? But what I'm trying to do isn't get hard code the information in it. Like this is what I mean by like roughly hard coding it, and then this is what I mean by making it a little simpler. So we're going to make it a little simpler and say, now I'm thinking about it and like, can I map my names and my bios in the same thing? Give me a second. Names.map. So this is what I'm doing. What I'm saying is within the names, okay. I'm gonna backtrack and do the object thing that I was gonna do, because I haven't thought at the top of my head right now. I can't think of a way to map through two at the same time within one function. So I'm gonna backtrack and say, let's say R, just so it holds all of them. There we go. GitHub Copilot to the rescue. Okay, so now we have all of these, right? So now what we're gonna do is say r.map, and then since it's a function, we're putting it inside these parentheses, and then we're doing an arrow function. So the parameter of your arrow function is going to go in the parentheses. So I'm going to call it item. I'm going to stop with the GitHub Copilot so you can follow along. Let's say item, and then I'm going to use my arrow function and then say bio, and then name is item.name. So in order to access this object that I have, I'm going to use the dot operator and then say r.name. But since, okay, this might make it easier and less confusing. R, and R. Cool. So what this is saying is access within the array function the thing called name, which is John, and the thing called bio, which is this whole sentence. Now, oh, okay, so I spoiled it. It's already here. I didn't see it myself. But basically what it's doing now is mapping through each of these objects and saying whatever the name thing is inside that object, make that the name, and whatever is the bio, make that the bio. And then inserts it in here, and then, yeah. So that's that. I'm gonna pause for a bit, ask if anyone has any questions, wants me to try something else. Can you copy and paste the array into the chat? Cool, will do. There. So what I can also do for everyone else is I can push this into a repo so that if you want, you can look into the code that I made, if you want. If you do, let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just like keep this in my local. But in case you wanted to learn the code itself, I can like, that would be great. Yes, and yes. Okay, we'll do. So GitHub, I'll do this later, but I'm just like starting the tab so I remembered to do it at the end. But yeah, we are good there. So we have learned one thing already. No, a bunch of things already. We have learned how to start create React app. We have learned functional versus class components. We have learned arrays and objects, or an array of objects. And we have learned how to map the content of the array of objects into a functional component and render multiple things at once. So we're cool there. We have learned a lot of things already. If you are lost, do not be afraid to put it in the chat. I am willing to backtrack. So we're cool there. Next up, what else can we do? What else can we do? Oh, we can style it. This is, I'm gonna go very quickly at it since folks are familiar with HTML and CSS, but something that I saw in a previous hackathon that I was coaching is that a group was like spending hours just trying to center something. So I'm gonna go over a little bit how to, just to clarify, is r.map the function which lets you run through each item of the array? Yes, exactly. So the map is the function that does like each of, like renders this for every single thing that is in R. Cool, there, we're good. Let me know if there are any follow-up questions. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, so I'm trying to remember what I was trying to get at, which was, we're going to try styling. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a little bit of the CSS in JS. Also, what I'm doing right now is not best practice in that I'm using one file for everything. In an ideal world, you would have a folder called components, and you would then have one file for each thing, bio.jsx or JS. So JS is just like a JavaScript file. If you see the icon will change and it'll say JSX. And that, so bio.jsx is specifically a React app because JSX is JS and HTML at the same time. So I'm just gonna say JSX because that's what I'm used to and I like seeing the icon. And what I'm gonna do is, so you see how here it just says function. When I move it into a different file, I would have to say export function, export default function blah. What that means is in this file, you can export or take out this function that I have. And then default just says you don't have to specify which function from that file you will pull. So export default is the thing that you add if you only have one function inside that thing. But if you have multiple functions and you are willing to call each function separately inside when you're importing them into app.js, you can just say export. Oh, I should have zoomed in. Oh my God, if you guys weren't able to, if you folks weren't able to see my text, I'll just keep it like this just in case so you don't have to squint. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm gonna keep default, and then because we need to do this, I'm gonna add import React from React. And then I think, so one thing to note is that if you see here, I only put the function in this separate file, but I kept the array of objects inside app.js because it is not the function, it's not the bio function that is calling this, it is the app function, which means the app function is going to need this next to it. Even though we are inputting this into the bio function, it is the app function that is using it. So we're cool there. And then next up, I'm going to try the styling. I keep forgetting what I'm trying to do. Oh, okay. This is the reason why I wanted to show you what it's like to have different files for each component. So if you see my error here, from line 7, character 8, it says that bio is not defined. So I'm calling bio without telling it where to find bio. So what I have to do is say import bio. So bio is the name of my function from, and then I say where the function is located. So not .bio, but rather component bio. And now everything works again. So I say the relative path of the file that has the function that I want to use. And relative path means, you know how sometimes people do this thing where like they copy this entire thing inside their into their HTML file? That only works locally. So what you want to do if you want to deploy your app, or if you want to do it anywhere outside of your local computer, is to use a relative path, which means this dot refers to this current folder. And then within this current folder, go into the components folder. And within the components folder, go into the bio file. Because it's in JS or JSX, the React kind of already understands that the default is JavaScript file. So you can just say bio, but you can also say bio.jsx. Up to you. But you can, like, things are done for you. So yeah. So going back, I keep pausing, but let's say const styles is my go-to. And then, so in CSS, if you remember, it's in curly braces. So it's kind of like an object. So what we're doing, oh, not here, here. So const styles, I will create an object, and then each object is then going to have its own object, not object, but like curly braces. So let's say container. Container is like the default name for things that contain things. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm gonna keep calling it container. So container is going to be what I'm calling this, like the entire app. So I'm gonna say container is with 100 VW. Cool. VW is viewport width. I'm using this specifically because this allows your website to be responsive. Responsive being you can see it on your phone and your computer without it being janky and like unstyled, or like pieces are like everywhere where you don't want it to be. So 100 viewport width means regardless of how wide your screen is, whether it's a phone or like mine, an ultra wide, it will follow however much is that width. So as opposed to like specifying how many pixels it is, that's not as like responsive. So I'm going to do viewport width, and then I'm going to say height, also viewport height. So now what this is going to do is my entire container is the screen at which you first see it. Like just, I keep pointing. This whole thing is your viewport, is your container. But if I zoom in all the way, this whole thing left to right is going to be your viewport, is going to be your container, sorry. So we have this, and then the thing I'm going to do so that everything is centered. So I mentioned earlier that one pitfall that people go through is like, I don't know how to center things. I got you, which means, so final higher cup check-in, cool. Rebecca got it. So there's this thing called Flexbox. So CSS tricks is my favorite place for this. See, I already got it like open too many times. A guide to Flexbox is very good for like learning how to make. So this is like, you make your own bootstrap with this stuff. Like you can arrange things without having to use Bootstrap. You could keep using Bootstrap, but like something that you'll think about when you're in bigger projects is the size of the project that you're working with. And if you use Bootstrap, there are like styles and components that you don't need but are still going to be in your project. So it kind of like makes it heavier and therefore longer to load. Even if it's just like a few seconds, it's still like, you still feel it. So if you want to make your own like positioning without having to use Bootstrap, which is a little heavy, you can use Flexbots. And this is like very user friendly. You can like look at what it's trying to say. So I'm going to post this in the chat for everyone. And it's called CSS tricks and a guide to Flexbots. So the reason why I brought this up is because in order to use Flexbox, you say display flex. One thing I forgot to mention is that if you're using CSS and JS, you put quotation marks and everything, but in regular CSS, you do not. So one thing you got to remember is for the value of the thing that you want to edit, like with or display, put quotation marks around it, regardless of what it is. I think except if it's an integer, because then like, let's say margin 0, I think you can keep it like that if I remember correctly. So you're good there. But yeah, so going back, display flex. One thing, if you want all of your things that you're trying to center to go this way, you leave it alone because flex direction is defaultly row. But let's say you want things to be this way. You want them to go downward. You're going to change it to flex direction column, which is explained, flex direction right here. That's where it's explained. Another thing to note about CSS in JS is that instead of having dashes in between things, like dash and then small letters, you're going to use camel case, which is like capital letter every next word except for the first one. So that's what we're doing here, flex capital D direction. And then now we're at column. Justify content is the thing that starts centering. And then align items also centers it. So the difference between justify contents and align items is that, so for example, my flex direction right now is column. So I'm going this way. Justify contents will follow the axis at which you are on. And then align items refers to the axis opposite it. So what this is doing is flex direction is column. And then justify contents is making it stay vertically in the middle. And then align items is making it vertically in the middle. Yeah, horizontally in the middle. So ideally, when I go back to my second tab, everything is going to be in the middle in one horizontal vertical line. So let's check out if I did this correctly. I'm missing something. I am missing a closing bracket. That is what I'm missing. And so, okay, so I'm done. But what I forgot to do is call the styles. In order to do that, I'm just going to change this into a div instead of a React fragment so that I can say, style is equal to styles.container. Remember, okay, let's see if it works. Cool beans. So now everything is centered and everything is in the middle. So what I did here was that it's an object that contains these things. And remember what I did here where I used the dot operator to access what's inside? I did the same thing where like I'm accessing the container that's inside. The reason why we're doing that is that, for example, if I want to put the styles of the bio component in here, I would say bio, and then everything is going to be here. So width, height, display flags, whatever. Everything's going to be here. And then once I'm ready to use that, I can say style and then styles.bio. Right there. And then everything is going to be followed. So what if I want to say display flex and then flex direction row? I told you that you don't have to say this, but I'm specifying just so everyone is clear. And then, oh, I can, let's say, oh, okay, so let's try background color, just so everyone can see it, blue. Did it work? Oh, I didn't call it yet, did I? Or did I reload? What am I doing wrong? Let's see, let's find out. Bio styles.bio is referring to that. Cool, 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 cool. Why isn't it turning blue? Okay, another thing we're gonna learn today, dev tools. Once you're in your Chrome, Control-Shift-C, or I think F12 also does it. Let's try F12. Cool, so Control-Shift-C or F12 will open this dev tools thing, and then it will allow you to look at the code of the page that you're looking at. One way to use these dev tools is if, for example, you're on Medium or Wall Street, but I need to leave this. Okay, we're cool. Bye, Rebecca. I'm sorry, I'm taking a second. The styles, the HTML tags, etc., of the thing that you are, of the website that you're looking at is going to be here. So if you're reading Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Medium, and you know how they tell you to pay for the rest of the for the rest of the article, or Torch Data Science also does the same thing. You can use these CSSs, the styling. So for example, if I go to styles, if I drop console down and then open styles, you will see that all the styles are here. So for example, if I want to make this the div that I'm in right now, which is the whole thing, if I want to add my own styles to it, it'll say element dot this thing, and then let's say background color, and then I want to call it aqua. This DevTools allows you to temporarily mess with the CSS of the page that you're on. So note that I said temporarily because this is the final styles. This is just like what Chrome is doing. So if you if you play with stuff inside DevTools just to see like, okay, this is how I center it, this is how many pixels I gotta move it. It's easier to do it here where it's like automatic versus like typing it into your thing. And then once you're done, transfer it over. Aqua. It's not gonna show up, so I'm just gonna say pink. But yeah, so going back, this should be pink. It's not pinking. Am I doing something wrong? Bio style, styles bio, and it goes right back. Odd. Maybe if I remove this. Very, very odd. Because all I want to do with it is like make it a certain color. Okay, so the thing that we were doing DevTools for is because I had no idea why my pink wasn't showing up. So we are debugging and we are figuring it out because it is a normal part for, okay, let's try a comma. Thank you, Hita. Cool. It did not work. The commas are only necessary if you have like stuff after it. But yeah, so it is a normal part of programming to debug and take a while to debug. So it is back. So Shrima, it is like background color, but we are using, so do you see how like there are errors? In CSS, we will use the dashes. However, in CSS in JS, if your styling is in the JavaScript file, you use camel case right here. So you capitalize the next letter of the word after the second word. So what I was doing is you can click this button, the one with the arrow right here, and then hover over the thing that you want to style. And the cool thing about this is like, so for example, here, you see that there's oranges next to it. That means margin. So you see how big the margin is. And then the margin, and then the dot, and then the dot. So what I'm trying to do right now is control the div that is a bio. So I'm going to click on it, and then all of the styles of that thing is going to show up here. And what this is telling me is that in this entire div, the name of the function that you're making called bio doesn't show up in the CSS. So you're just going to have to like eyeball it. However, I'm clicking it and I'm seeing that my styles did not transfer over, like it's not being called. Which means there is something wrong with the style of my styles. I'm doing it the exact same way. That is so odd. One thing I'm noticing is like the colors are different for the, oh, that's why they're different. Okay, so that's not it either. We got this. We got this. Let's try. Let's see. Is there anything in the errors in here? The href, valid value to be accessible. We don't care. Okay, maybe it wants me to have the hexadecimal, but it's not doing that either. Let's say 777. I don't know what color that is. We'll find out. That's not working either. And oh, my cat's here. Let's see. I wonder if this will work here. So I'm just trying stuff out at this point and seeing if, okay, so it's changing. Okay, so we're good, we're good. So when I go into app or like put it in a different div, the styles reflect. But when I go into bio, the styles indeed do not reflect. Therefore, the error. I want to say the reason why there's a problem here is because I am styling another component one level up. So I'm going to try doing this, going into my bio, const styles, and then bio, and then close it. And then I'm going to say styles.bio. What is good? Okay, cool. So we're good there. So to recap, the thing that I was doing wrong was that I was styling it up here where it's being called instead of in here where it's being declared. So if I want to say pink now, it should work. And now it's a very nice, pleasant shade of pink. I was expecting it to be like bubblegum Barbie pink, but that's cool. So is everyone cool so far? Is everyone following? Does anyone have any questions? I see a thumbs up. That is awesome. All good. Thank you. Awesome. So we have tried styling. We have tried centering. Does anyone have any suggestions on what we do next? Oh, we're at 11:56. Sorry. I guess with the time that I have left, I'm going to answer any questions while I get into my GitHub and upload the code. So any questions, concerns, etc., things they want to ask. Maybe you started your project and you're trying to debug. Hydra Hacks Workshop. Yeah. Cool. And then this is public, and then I don't need to read me or git ignore, etc. Create repo. So this is an empty repository right now. You can either create a new one or push an existing one. Now, did you remember how we have a git ignore right here? That means that create React app already treats it like a repo. So all you have to do now is push it in this direction. So what we're gonna do is do this. Just copy and paste. So I can open a new terminal so that while this is going on, while my page is hot reloading, I can open a different tab and then do the git commands over there. So let's try this. Let's find out. Oh, cool. Okay, so I pushed it, and now if I reload, ta-da! So that is how you push your React app onto GitHub once you have it made. So we have come full circle, and I think I really did well. I think we put it in a neat bow, and I hope that people learned a few things with our workshop for today. Any feedback before